Hello, welcome to this Computer Weekly video. I'm Brian Glick, I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Computer Weekly, and in this video we're talking about desktop virtualization. Now this is a technology that's been around for quite a long time, but hasn't always been as widely adopted as perhaps it might. So we're going to be talking about what's changed in the world of desktop virtualization and asking the question, is now finally the time to look at this as a viable technology within your organisation? To help me do this, I'm joined by David Angwin. David is Marketing Director at Dell. David, thank you for coming on and joining us. So, as I said there in the intro, this is a technology that's been around for a long time, and I've heard a lot of people in the past saying, "Oh, it's too complicated, it's too costly, it's too difficult." Why is it we haven't seen more widespread adoption of this over the years?
I think you hit some of the key reasons there. I think cost is particularly with desktop virtualization. I think took some people by surprise. People were very used to some of the old application publishing technologies being a really quick win from a cost point of view. And then when you start to deliver a complete desktop, suddenly the back-end infrastructure needed is larger, and so that put the cost up. At the same time, delivering a complete desktop experience that's running somewhere kind of 100 meters or 100 miles or 1,000 miles away is by its nature complex, and it has taken a while for the experts in the field really to get their hands around that. And then probably the most important one is user experience. That if you are going to go in on the weekend, take the PC out from somebody's desk, put another device, maybe a thin client on the desk, and they come in on Monday morning, the experience they get had better be at least as good and preferably better than what they had before. If it is, they'll love it, and they'll say, "My PC just got smaller," and will be very happy. If it's not, they will be banging on IT's door saying, "What have you done to my desktop? I can't be as productive as I needed to be. Take it away, give me back the old stuff." And unfortunately, the industry is littered with proof of concepts that weren't properly scoped out and delivered, and as a result the user experience wasn't where it needed to be, and in most cases those projects didn't go forward.
And we'll explore some of those specific issues in a little more detail in a moment, but perhaps first of all, clearly what we're going to talk about is how some of those things have been addressed, but what has changed in recent years to try and get over some of those problems?
Well, firstly, the industry has understood the problems and put a lot of effort, a lot of time and effort into addressing this. Just at Dell, we've spent kind of hundreds of thousands of hours in developing solutions and architectures that we know exactly what they're going to do. If you come to us and say, "I want a solution for 500 users," we know exactly what it will take to deliver that with the user experience that is required. So there's a lot of work from the industry gone into this, and also new technologies. I mean, software defined is making a big difference in this area as well.
Okay, now let's pick up then on some of those old gripes about desktop virtualization, things that probably people watching this video who maybe tried to look at the technology a few years ago will perhaps recognise, and you picked up earlier on probably the biggest one of those, the user experience, that a lot of users when they moved onto a virtual desktop just found their experience just degraded compared to what they had before with a standard desktop of their own. How is desktop virtualization addressing that now?
Well, I think the thing we need to recognise is that users' requirements haven't stayed the same either. That you go back 5 or 10 years and use of video in business was a kind of little or none, and now it's kind of watching YouTube is a legitimate business activity, whereas it wasn't previously. So the requirements have gone up significantly. The way that desktop virtualization technology has adapted is, in particular, the protocols that connect the data center down to the client. They have become much more capable. All the major vendors have protocols that will handle up to 3D graphics now, and there are some very good solutions in the market today where CAD designers and media designers are using virtual desktops. So the it can't do graphics has very much been removed. One of the other approaches that we take is to make sure that we're delivering the workload at the most appropriate place. So if it makes more sense to do something on the client, we will do it on the client. And probably the best example of that is unified communications. That once you've actually identified that somebody is available, you want the voice call or the video call to be going peer-to-peer from client to client. You don't want to send that traffic and that workload through the data center, because it'll overload the data center and also give a worse user experience. So it's applying this, where do we need the workload to sit, and then supporting that with really capable protocols has absolutely transformed the user experience. And there is really nothing from a user experience perspective that you can't do with virtualization technology today.
Okay. Okay, so users are happier now when they're using it, but from an IT manager's perspective, I've heard a lot of people in the past say, they didn't realise just how complex this technology was. It's not easy to use. It's difficult to implement. The management overheads around it are much more than they expected. What's changed in that area?
It's maturity of the solution. Previously, because by very nature somebody adopting the technology early, they were more at the cutting edge. They had to be more aware and capable themselves to be able to do this. Now the approach, and particularly the approach of Dell, is to we have done all the testing, we have done all the scaling, and we've done it in real life, not just on paper, so that we know what it takes to deliver a particular environment. And so because of that, it becomes predictable, and then that reduces risk. The other thing that is happening is that the technology is developing. So and appliances are really I think this year is probably the year when we will see best adoption of appliances, where using converged infrastructure with software pre-installed, we can put in a solution for 100, 200 users just on one server, and if you need another 200, put another one in.
Okay. Now the last area was perhaps the most frequently heard one was this is not cheap. I can remember talking to people years ago in desktop virtualization who would say, we put this business case together, we were expecting to save all this much money, it cost us more than it used to be when we just gave everybody desktops. How on earth did this happen? Is this really now an affordable technology for most organizations?
Yeah, absolutely it is. So and just in terms of a well-deployed desktop virtualization project will be in the same ballpark as a PC refresh. And whether it's slightly more or slightly less than a PC refresh will pretty much come down to what existing infrastructure you have available in the data center that you can utilize. But even on a complete greenfield site, then putting in desktop virtualization and putting in PCs are pretty much the same cost. So you can then look at the long-term cost benefits, where you dramatically reduce support costs, you reduce management costs, you reduce security costs. So yes, it is more cost-effective. One of the biggest cost areas that took people by surprise, particularly when the introduction of virtual desktops, was storage costs, because you go from cheap storage on PCs to expensive storage in the data center. And we weren't using that storage as efficiently as we should have done. So there's a lot of work gone on in optimizing storage, particularly for desktop virtualization, and also software-defined storage is a much more flexible solution, a much more scalable solution than having to always put in some kind of SAN solution or something like that. So those things together have really driven the infrastructure costs down, and the licensing costs are coming down as well.
Okay, so we've hopefully addressed some of the age-old complaints that have been made about desktop virtualization. Let's finish by looking on something more positive. If you had one reason that you would give to an organisation to consider desktop virtualization within their IT infrastructure above all others, what do you think that would be?
I think it's very difficult to do it to answer that question generically, because you really need to look at the organisation and understand the use cases that they have. What are the particular pain points, and where will desktop virtualization really deliver the most benefits? Because some users, it will always be marginal. And a lot of users, it will be an absolutely compelling case. So it's just understanding the user base and where the right fit is. But having identified where it's the best fit, it is, don't do it yourself. The industry has developed the capabilities to be able to deliver it in a fast and very reliable way. People talk about proof of concept. Personally, I don't think people should be doing proof of concept, because that basically says, if I plug these bits together, will they work? And we know they work. What you should really be looking at is a pilot. So talk with the supplier, talk with Dell in terms of what is the right solution for this particular use case going to be. We have online advisors that can very quickly say, well, this is what this kind of project will look like from a technology and from a cost point of view, and then say, okay, so let's put in a pilot and try it, because nobody's users are going to be exactly the same as the users in the model that the vendors put together, but they'll be in the ballpark. And so you actually need to get some live users on it, get their feedback, listen very carefully to what they're saying, and then tune it before you go for a bigger rollout. Okay.
David Angwin from Dell, thanks very much for coming along and talking to us about desktop virtualization and how the technology has matured in recent years. That's all we've got time for on this video. We've been talking about desktop virtualization and addressing some of the common old complaints about that technology, and hopefully helping to give you some tips on how to put together a business case for desktop virtualization in your organisation. Thanks for watching.